Welcome back to the Blue Chip Breakdown, Vols fans. I'm your host, Bull, and with the end of the season here, with bowl season coming up on us, NFL draft coming up, and the transfer portal is about to open up, I wanted to kind of talk about who are some players that could opt out of our bowl game, who could end up going into the NFL draft, who won't come back next season, and who are some guys that this coaching staff might want to push out of the door for next season. And I want to start off with the guy that I feel like the staff has got to push out of the door, and that's Jaylen Wright. And they're going to want to push him out because he is a running back and he is an NFL talent. He needs to go on to that next level, okay? It's time for him to go on ahead and make his bones as a pure professional, and that's exactly what I expect for him to do. I also expect for him to opt out of this bowl game. I just don't see any reason for him to play. He's already shown enough throughout this entire season that he's a strong, powerful, running back, and he plays in the SEC. He's averaging 7-something yards per carry. He's past 1,000 yards in an offense that featured two other running backs pretty heavily. So he's done everything that he needs to do. Running backs do not have a long career, especially in the NFL. As soon as you're ready to go, I think that you need to, and Jaylen Wright is definitely one of those guys. Now, once Jaylen Wright leaves, the question is going to be, who's going to be able to take over in that backfield? Obviously, been hearing the rumblings about Dylan Sampson potentially wanting to get into that transfer portal. How much of that is him kind of mimicking what Jaylen Wright did last season and trying to get some more NIL money? I don't know. I haven't heard enough about that situation yet. But one other guy that I think is probably going to be leaving us this season is Jabari Small. Now, he participated in senior day, and he's another really good running back. Now, I don't know if him or Jaylen are going to be first round picks. But, I do think that for sure Jaylen could find himself as a second or third round pick, which is really high for a running back in the NFL. And, I feel like Small could find himself picked up at some point in the process. Now, with Small, I would most definitely recommend for him to try to come and play in that bowl game. I think that he probably wants to get a little bit more film to some of these NFL scouts. But if he decides not to, I completely get it. You don't want to take that risk of injury, especially playing inside of that box and running that football like these guys do. All right, and the next guy that I think could opt out of the bowl game potentially would be Joe Milton. Okay, now I know a lot of y'all probably going to be rolling y'all's eyes, but he played the best game of his entire life, in the final regular season game versus Vanderbilt. Okay, so he accounted for 6 touchdowns, and he showed all these NFL scouts and coaches probably everything that they would have wanted to see from him inside of one game. Now, obviously, he's going to have to continue to kind of show some of that, but I think that his body of work is what it is. All right, so he could probably be a guy that says, hey, I'm just going to opt out of this bowl game, and, I'm just going to take my chances at, my pro day, at the combine, things like that, which he's going to absolutely light up. He's a guy that could, I said before that he might not be a first rounder, but I've seen him rated as highly as the number 3 quarterback in this draft. And if he ends up at that spot, he will be a first round pick. But I think that he's probably somewhere around a second-ish round pick, maybe into the first to a second round pick. I think that he's going to work himself up that high. Now, is he going to sit out? Probably not. I just don't think that's in his character. It's really not necessary for him to do that. You could look at it the one way that I just said, and you could also look at it like, well, heck, maybe you want to try to put together 2 great games like that back to back. And if he does that, he's going to be a first round pick for sure. Next guy that I want to talk about is Cooper Mays. Now, Coop did not participate in senior day, as we all know, and that is a big deal. It sounds like he wants to come back. Now, he is not rated very highly on many draft boards, so it may benefit him, especially coming off of a season where, he was injured for like 3 to 4 games. You want to try to put together a full body of work in your senior season. I do think that he's an underrated center prospect, though. He's a little bit on the shorter side, just a taste undersized, but he's an absolute dog. He's a guy that's going to interview well at the combines and things like that with the scouts, GMs, and coaches. They're absolutely going to fall in love with Coop. So, I think that he does have the potential and opportunity to go ahead and go pro, but this is a guy that bleeds orange, okay? He wants to help this team get as far as they can go in the playoffs. And next season, whenever there's a 12-team playoff, with a pretty much freshman quarterback, this is going to be his first year as a starter. I think that Coop wants to come back and try to help, this football team and program make that transition. And, I'm obviously just speculating. It's pure speculation. I don't know if any of that is true, but if you look at his personality, it kind of seems like that's the way that he is. Now, obviously, if his draft stock skyrockets for any reason, then he's going to go, and I think that he should go. But do not be surprised if Cooper Mays returns for one last season with the Volunteers. All right, so the next two guys that I want to talk about are our tight ends, Jacob Warren and McCallan Castles. I think that both of these guys probably need to come back and play for one more game because obviously both of them are going to want to try to get into the NFL draft or get drafted, picked up by somebody somewhere at some point. I definitely think that both of those guys have a good enough skill set and, a good enough body. You know what I mean? Like they've got good size, especially Jacob Warren. He's about 6'7". He might be closer to 6'8". He's got some long arms. He's got good hands, and he's kind of done it all for this football team. Now, Callie is another guy, he's 6'5", 245, 250. I think he's going to test well. I think he's going to look really good on the field drills. And, he's definitely a guy that some teams are going to covet at the tight end position. So I do think that they might need to try to come back for one more game. I'm pretty sure that Jacob Warren is going to. Now, Callie, I'm not quite sure. That's going to be a situation where he's going to have to, talk to his agent and things like that and kind of see where they have him slotted to go. And if he's going to be, I'd say like a second round pick, if they've already got him there, there's no need for him to play. Keep in mind, guys, we want all of our guys to get drafted. That is going to mean a lot more than them playing in this bowl game. I promise you that. That looks a lot better to some of these, incoming prospects that we're going to want in at the end of the 24 class, at the 25 class, 26, 27, so on and so forth. Those guys are going to want to see how many players has Tennessee had drafted, especially under this coaching staff. We can't always live up under that, former era where we had a bunch of players drafted. You know what I mean? In the Johnny Majors era, those eras are just too far behind us. We need some more recent draft picks. So that would actually benefit us a lot more if these guys are slotted to go high enough where they can just opt out of the bowl game and hopefully they can get drafted. Next guy is Javontes Spraggins. He is our starting right guard. He recently got injured up against UGA. And, with that being said, he kind of went from like a second to third round pick on, most draft boards to an undrafted free agent. And that breaks my heart for that young man because he has given his all for Tennessee as much as he possibly could. And I'm super, super proud of him. But it does look like his situation, in a much more unfortunate way, it looks like he's going to have to come back for one more season with our Volunteers. Obviously, that is good for the team, per se, but I mean, it breaks your heart for that young man. So I wish him all the best. I think that if there are some rumblings, right, where some teams just absolutely fall in love with Spraggs, his personality, off the field stuff, things like that, and they're saying, hey, we still kind of have you as a third round pick, we're going to pick you up in this third round, then he might take that chance. He might go on ahead and try to, test the NFL waters, and I would not blame him for it. All right, now speaking of injuries, I want to talk about Brew McCoy. He did participate in senior day. Obviously, he's not going to be eligible to play in our bowl game. But with the nature of his injury, it's kind of hard to pinpoint if he wants to try to go into the draft, if he's just done playing football, which is, totally possible, or if he just went through senior day just to kind of go through that while he's trying to think it out and trying to fill out what he should do, what's going to be best for him, and then he might still end up coming back next season. I'm not going to be mad at him either way. I just wish him the absolute best. I wish all these guys the absolute best, but he's definitely a player that we all know gave his all for this team. I think that he was underutilized so much on this team, especially this season. We should have been forcing the football to him so much more than we actually did. And, just sad to see him go down with that injury. I'm still sad to this day. Just talking about it, really breaks my heart. But if he does come back, obviously that would be huge for this football team. And if he does decide to maybe go into the draft, not quite sure what he would be picked at. I don't know, with him coming off surgery still and trying to get back into the swing of things, it'll be, interesting to see if he feels like he's going to be up to the task of going through some of these combine drills or some of these, other on the field drills just to kind of show some of these NFL scouts. That's something that I can say. I would probably caution against trying to do that. I would caution against trying to push yourself to, perform on some timed drills if you're not up to full speed, because those times stick. I'm telling you, once those times are set in stone, they're set in stone. So you do not want to get out there and underperform. I think that he has great size. I think that bare minimum at full strength, he is a, second round pick. I'm talking about at bare minimum. He's too big, he's too strong, he's too fast, he's too much of a football player. He's going to test great whenever he's at full strength. So, I think that it would actually probably benefit him just from, where I'm sitting at. Might benefit him to come back for one more season, hopefully be able to get through the season healthy and be able to participate in all of these combine type drills at full strength. Next guy that I want to talk about is John Campbell Jr. So he was the transfer from Miami, and he was our starting left tackle. You saw that he didn't play for like the past 3 to 4 games. They said that he was kind of banged up, and I'm sure that he probably was. But to me, what it seems like since he participated in senior day, it seems like he probably said, hey, I heard this, that, and the third from some agent or from somebody saying that I can get picked at this point in the draft. Again, this is pure speculation, and he kind of shut it down. I think that if he tries to go into the NFL draft, that would be a big mistake. I have not seen anywhere on any site that has him rated anywhere near high enough to be a draftable left tackle. I just don't see that. Now, his size looks good, right? So he's at about prototype size for a tackle, but I think his arms are a little bit on the shorter side. And, I saw him get beat with speed on a pretty consistent basis. I think that it would really benefit him very, very heavily to, maybe try to come back for one more season. And if he is going to go into the NFL draft, then he definitely needs to try to play in this bowl game, because he needs to put some better film out there if he wants to try to get drafted at any point or even picked up as a free agent. And that's not a shot at John Campbell, but I'm just keeping it real, man. I think that would be a big mistake if he does not come back for one more season. Or, maybe he's going to transfer. Maybe he wants to transfer, down to a lower classification and try to play somewhere else. Maybe he's done playing football. I don't know. We'll see that in these next coming weeks. Next guy on that offensive line is Gerald Mincey. So he's got beautiful size. He's 6'6", almost 340 pounds. And, he's shown me a lot this season. I actually had kind of made a video before, and in that video I was talking about Gerald Mincey being a guy that I did not want back, okay? So I'm going to say this. After what he did in that Vanderbilt game, you could tell that he was visibly hurting. You could tell that he was banged up big time. And he was the only, starter that was left on that offensive line once Cooper Mays went down. So I would say that he's shown me a lot of toughness and grit. Now, was that toughness and grit for this football team, or was it more for him trying to get into the NFL draft? I've actually seen him as high as 2nd and 3rd round picks, believe it or not. So he's a guy that it seems like somebody somewhere really covets his skill set. He's obviously has some off the field issues. There were some times throughout the season that I did not like what his effort looked like. And, it'll be interesting to see if he's a guy that does opt to go into the NFL draft. Is he going to be a guy that this coaching staff wants back next season? I would say that they probably would. Again, after what he showed in that Vanderbilt game, he's a guy that I would love to have back for next season. But if he does go, hopefully he can get drafted. Again, that's going to look good for this team, especially with the offensive line. We need a whole lot of good offensive linemen in these next couple of classes. So that will look great on us, especially if he can get picked as high as what that one site had him projected as. All right, so I'm going to do 2 more guys on the offensive line. And that's going to be Dane Davis, who has great size. He's been a very versatile player for this football team, kind of a do-it-all guy. He can play center, guard, tackle, either side. So you absolutely love that about him. I don't think that he's a draftable player, okay? I think that he does come back for one more season because he did not participate in senior day as far as I know. But if he does come back, I think that he would be a great, great piece to this team. He would almost be, sort of a cornerstone of this offensive line. And, that would obviously help us not have to go into that transfer portal and get too many bodies. All right, so now the other guy is Jackson Lampley. He's another one that they've kind of tried around in some different places on this offensive line, but primarily he is a guard, and he's a solid football player. I don't think that he has much of, any NFL, draft potential, I would not say. But he is a solid player, and he would help, I think, if he comes back next season. Now, this is where things kind of start to get tricky at. Will there be enough room on this roster with a guy like Jordan Seaton potentially coming in, and with us probably going to that transfer portal? Do you want to try to bring Jackson Lampley back, or do you kind of say, hey, man, the roster is kind of starting to get full, and we may not have a spot for you? If there's anyone on this team that I would say probably may get pushed out of the door just for that purpose, I would say it might be Jackson Lampley. Now, obviously, again, I'm not a coach, so, I don't know what he brings to that locker room or anything like that, but I would just say that as a player right now, I think that we could probably, get a little bit higher of a ceiling with some different pieces, without Jackson necessarily on this roster. Now, that's not a shot at Jackson, okay? I absolutely love him, but, again, we're just keeping it real on this channel. But, wish him all the absolute best. If he does come back next season, I think that would be great because, again, he's versatile enough and he's going to give his all enough, even if it's in a role where he's kind of, helping us to teach some of these younger guys or some of these transfer guys. I think that would be very beneficial to this team. All right, now for defense. We're going to start off with Tyler Barron, who is our defensive end, and I think that he's going to go on ahead and turn pro. He is an NFL player for sure. I think that he could get picked as high as the 2nd to 3rd round, depending on how he tests. Now, he could potentially also be a guy that does not participate in our bowl game. He might try to opt out. I could see that from him, especially given that, I feel like he's shown enough. He looked good, especially in that Vanderbilt game. Sometimes guys kind of like want to walk off with a good, productive game, which he did have. Now, if he does come back and play one more game, I don't think that he could hurt his stock too much. Just honestly speaking, I think that as long as he just plays with good, sound fundamentals, he's not going to go backwards. So I think that him playing one more game could help him, but he kind of strikes me as a guy that may end up opting out. We will see. Hopefully we can get him back because we could definitely use him in our bowl game against whoever we're playing up against. He's an absolute stud. All right, now I want to talk about Big O. All right, so Big O is our starting defensive tackle. I think that he took a step back this season. Okay, I think that he played better last year than he did this season. And I'm not quite sure why that is. And he also participated in senior day. So you have to ask yourself, is he doing it for the festivities or is he trying to go on ahead and go into the NFL draft? He's another guy that I have not seen a lot of draft buzz around. Now, granted, the real draft stuff is not going to come out until about after the championship week. So within the next couple of weeks, we'll kind of start to see some things trickling out. And they have better access to what these coaches and scouts are thinking about them than what we have. Obviously, they can, kind of talk to agents. I don't think that they're really supposed to, but they still will. And, they're going to hear from some scouts and coaches and things like that. So he may have some good information that says that he could be a high enough draft pick. And I would say 2nd to 3rd round is about where most of these guys are going to want to kind of see before they decide to say, hey, I'm not going to come back next season. I'm going to take my chances in the NFL draft. So if he does go, I wish him all the best. I think that he's going to test well. He's a big guy who can definitely move. Now, that is going to make us, a little bit softer next year in the middle of our defense. It's already a place where we're going to be, losing some bodies at. And, it would be nice to see him come back, but I'm not mad at none of these guys if they leave. So we'll see what he does in that situation. Next guy is another defensive tackle in Norman-Lott. Okay, so he transferred in from Arizona State, and I was not very impressed with his film at all. I did see some flashes of what he could be, but it just looked like he was not motivated. He came here and he proved me way wrong, okay? Once he got motivated, he's an absolute stud. He's an NFL player for sure. I think that he's probably going to be underrated wherever he gets drafted at, but he's a guy that if he can go to the right place, I think that he could be a Pro Bowl tackle, and I sincerely mean that. He's got an incredible skill set, and if he goes, I think that would be good for the team overall. Kind of like looking, moving forward. Obviously, we would miss him tremendously. I would love for him to come back. Saying all this because he did participate in the senior day. And there's really no telling. He could just be doing that just to enjoy those festivities. You just never know. All right? You will not know until it fully comes out or until some more information does come out. But does seem like Norman-Lott would be a guy that would probably go on ahead and go pro. I also think that he would probably opt out of our bowl game, and I did not mention this with Big O, but I think that he would also opt out of our bowl game if he is deciding to go pro. All right, so the next tackle is Elijah Simmons. Now, he was hurt for a good portion of this season, but whenever he played, I think that he was probably our best tackle, especially our best run-stopping tackle. He took a giant leap forward this season. Now, to my knowledge, he did not participate in senior day. Let me know down in the comments if y'all have any more information on that. But, if he does come back, I think that would be huge because this team needs defensive tackles in the worst way. And having our best one come back would be a big, big deal for this football team. Obviously, I think that he's going to play in the bowl game unless he is, opting to go into the NFL draft. In that situation, I still think he might play, but, there's really no telling. All right, so now let's take it to the second level of this defense with Aaron Beasley. I think that he is going to play in our bowl game. He just strikes me as that sort of a player. And, he knows that we're pretty light at linebacker right now. If he doesn't play, that's going to be a really tough game for Tennessee because he's our best linebacker right now. And Elijah Herring still is trying to figure things out. So, expect for him to definitely play. I think that he is a draftable football player. Not quite sure where he goes. I feel like he'll probably test well at the combine. A lot of his off the field stuff is going to probably benefit him a lot, or, it can benefit him a lot. I think that's where he's going to try to make most of his bones at. Now, he played beautifully in our bowl game last season versus Clemson. I think he was probably the player of the game, in all honesty. And if he can do something like that again in this bowl game, which, I feel like he probably expects himself to, that would be a huge, huge deal because that could kind of catapult him, a little bit higher on some of these teams' draft boards. And again, if he can kind of put that together with a very productive, combine season and, testing season, then, I think that he could be potentially a, third to fourth round draft pick. All right, so the next guy on that second level is Keenan Pili. Now, he's very, very interesting because he could get that medical red shirt this season. And we had talked about this earlier in the season that he could be coming back. He was actually, supposed to have been cleared to come back and play after his injury. But sounds like what he's been doing is deciding if he wants to continue playing football, deciding if he wants to try to turn pro, or deciding if he wants to try to come back for one more season. Now, he did not participate in the senior day, so I think that he is trying to come back. That's going to be up to the NCAA to decide if he can get that medical red shirt season. But if he can, and if he comes back next year, wow. I mean, this defense is going to be absolutely sick. I'm really, really looking forward to that. I mean, we're talking about going from probably the weak point of our defense being our linebackers to that more than likely being the strong point of this defense. So I'm really excited for that. And, I wish him all the best. All right, now for the secondary, we're going to start off with Gabe Judy-Lally. He's another guy that's played a lot of football, is transferred from Vanderbilt, then to BYU, then here to Tennessee. And, he's played well for us, okay? Obviously, he can come back for one more season is what they're saying. He did participate in senior day, so I think that he's probably going to go. I think that there's a couple of things that he's going to need to work on as a defensive back for the next level, and that's man-to-man coverage down the football field. He's really, really good at that squat stuff. He's a great zone cornerback. But down the football field, he does not do a great job in man-to-man coverage. And in the NFL, you've got to be able to play man. They play a lot of man. You're going to see a whole lot of cover zero where you have no help behind you. So, I think that he probably needs to try to come back in this game and, maybe ask the coach, say, hey, can we run a little bit of man here so that I can show some of my skills? And then he's going to have to put together some phenomenal testing numbers, in the on-the-field drills for him to, really be a draftable football player. Now, I also think that he's going to test, very well, and, like with the interviews, things like that. I think he's going to interview very, very well. You can tell that he's a very smart football player. He's from Texas. You can tell that he knows football. And, he's going to do well in that portion of it. He's got good size. He's got good length. He's just going to have to work on that man-to-man coverage. So expect for Gabe Judy to more than likely play in our bowl game. And, expect for him to go on ahead and turn pro. Next guy in that secondary is a safety, and that's Wesley Walker. Now, obviously, he's kind of banged up. I've heard that he was out for the season. Then I heard that, he's kind of like day-to-day. So I don't know. Maybe he can play in this bowl game. I think that would be great for him because he did participate in senior day. So maybe he's kind of like Big O and some of these other guys where they're hearing things that we're not necessarily seeing, where sounds like they've got a good enough draft stock for them to go ahead and opt into the NFL draft. And I'll say this, that's great news. I mean, I'm happy for these guys if they can get drafted. Now, I think that Wesley Walker was our best safety, okay? And if he does come back, that would be a great thing for this team. Now, The other part about that is, that secondary is starting to kind of get a little bit crowded, especially because, two guys that I'm not going to talk about is T-Mac and Slaughter. I think that both of those guys are going to be coming back next season. But, whenever you talk about a guy like Wesley Walker, I think that he could potentially be a 3rd to 4th round draft pick, depending how things kind of fall. If he's too banged up, obviously he won't be able to test well. And for these skill position guys, the testing portion of the combine season is a huge, huge deal. So that's what kind of scares me with him is it's like, okay, if you are too hurt to be able to play, then you may not want to try to opt into going into the NFL draft. You might want to stay because you could be kind of hurting yourself by trying to force it and, going into the draft before your body is actually ready. Same thing that we saw, or, same thing that we talked about with Brew. So we'll see what he does, but I would say that more than likely, if he can go, expect for him to play in our bowl game. And I think that we'll have a pretty solid team. Not going to talk about anybody else. I think that that's more than enough. This has already been a long enough video. And, I really appreciate y'all for sticking all the way to the very, very end. But, I will have another video coming out talking about who we need to go pick up in that transfer portal and, things like that. So we'll be having that coming out here shortly once we get some more information on who's more than likely staying and who is more than likely going. But thank y'all as always for tuning in. Please make sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, share it with your friends, family, and other volunteer fans, and we'll catch y'all on the next one. Thanks. Peace.